G'day guys, welcome back to the Rugby League Guru podcast. Obviously the big news that has just broken over the last hour or so is Leo Thompson. He's reportedly set to join the Canterbury Bulldogs. Now obviously there was the report about a month ago that he was going to join the Canberra Raiders. I reacted to that straight away, sort of took it as gospel. Did hear within a few days that it wasn't as rock solid as it sounded. I mentioned on the podcast that we would wait for confirmation on that and whatnot. I still thought he was going to be at the Raiders, to be completely honest with you, but the Bulldogs, what a get. They have managed to land Leo Thompson. Is a 4-year deal from 2026 onwards. We'll start with Canterbury. Look, watching them over the last 12 months has been an incredible ride to see where they've come from to where they got to and who they are now. I really like the Bulldogs heading into the future. I do want to see how they go in 2025 before I get too excited. We obviously have seen a number of teams that have jumped up the ladder over the years and then fallen back pretty damn quickly. I do feel like there is something a little bit different out there at Canterbury. I just feel like with Phil Gould in charge and, some of the other people that are involved there, I do have a bit more confidence in the Bulldogs than I do in other sides. You might remember the last few pre-seasons. I was skeptical of the Cowboys after they went big. I was skeptical of the Warriors after they went big. I don't feel that way with the Bulldogs, if I'm completely honest with you. I do think they'll be there and thereabouts. I think they will play finals footy next year. Obviously pending a bad injury run, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, the injury run wasn't perfect this year. They still made it work. I think they've just sort of found, I was about to say stumbled on something special, but that isn't fair. I think they found something special out there at Canterbury. I think Leo Thompson, obviously, he's not going to be there in 25. And I'm not expecting the Bulldogs to win a comp in 25. I'm not even expecting them to be a top 4 side. But I think that if they can just find their way into finals footy once again, I think by the time he arrives in 2026, the halves, they'll be another year older. I think you got to remember they are still pretty young. Matty Burton, I'd say, is 24. I think Toby Sexton's 22, 23. So 2 ball players that are both under the age of 25. To have a successful team with 2 ball players like that is reasonably rare. Reid Marnie's not young, but he's not super old either. Connor Tracy's been a bit of a journeyman. So as far as the spine goes, it's a pretty young sort of unorthodox spine, but they make it work and they've got strike in plenty of other spots. Leo Thompson arriving though, I feel like there wasn't a moment in 2024, despite how excited I got, that there wasn't in the back of my mind going, can their forward pack do this consistently? Can they keep on rising above their normal expectations? Can they keep punching well and truly above their weight? It's fantastic to do. It's great to see. But doing it for 26 weeks straight across 3, 4, 5 years, it can be very, very tough. And I think you could sort of see, even just by the end of the season, it did start to take a toll on the Canterbury Bulldogs. And unless your name is the Penrith Panthers, it tends to take a toll on everyone. So I do think when I looked at that squad from day one, even to the back end of the season, they did need to go out and sign a middle. And honestly, the Warriors, they got Fisher Harris, which I think is the best, middle forward you could have gone out and got, pretty much not named Payne Haas. I think I'd still rather Fish, to be honest with you, as a leader. And I think the next guy that's going to enter that top tier is going to be Leo Thompson. And people will point to stats and Supercoach points and all that sort of stuff. And sure, he might not have those, and I know people use that against him. They'll compare him to a Payne Haas, for example, and I get where you're coming from. I understand it. But once again, if you look at James Fisher-Harris, you compare his stats, Supercoach points, all that sort of stuff that's black and white, it doesn't really stack up against a guy like Payne Haas, but his record against Payne Haas is absolutely incredible. He has won 4 comps in a row. We'll see what he does when he arrives over there at the New Zealand Warriors. But I do believe that despite the game changing, and I think this will always be the case, despite rugby league changing and developing and adapting throughout the years, I always feel like that alpha middle forward is always going to be a guy you're going to want on your team. And you have a look at the Roosters. We all give them shit about, cheating the salary cap and not playing by the rules and all this sort of stuff. Have you noticed the one guy they've kept for the last 13 fucking years? It is their alpha front row forward, who's a bit of an asshole because it kind of matters, JWH. Now without him, I'm really concerned. There's plenty of stats out there about how the Roosters go with him and without him. I think it's very, very important to have that alpha guy in your forward pack. Now, you don't need it in every single pack to be successful, don't get me wrong, but I think it is a special ingredient that there's not too many guys in the comp that are like that. And if you can manage to get your hands on one of those guys, I just think it's just invaluable. I really do love this for Canterbury, and I think they've got that guy. A lot of people sort of questioning the price tag and everything, which we don't know what it is officially. To be fair, we're only hearing, what's being reported and whatnot. And it wasn't that long ago we were reported he'd signed with the Canberra Raiders. It was done deal. So you can't believe absolutely everything you read. But it sounds like sort of the 700 to 800K range for Leo Thompson, which honestly, I don't think it's that bad. I know a lot of people are blowing up about it. He's not worth it, and sure, but I just think he is going to be one of those true alpha guys over the next few years. I honestly do believe that. I'm okay with paying 700-800K. I was especially okay if you're the Canberra Raiders. Realistically, where are you going to spend that money elsewhere? I look at the Bulldogs. I think they are one middle short, and I think they are one intimidator short as well. I think everyone needs that main intimidator. And I look at that side right now. I don't think Max King is that guy. He's a brilliant front row forward, but he doesn't have that intimidation factor to him. Josh Curran's very similar. They're two workhorses that'll get through a lot. Don't have that intimidation factor. I think Kikau's got a little bit of that about him, but he's not playing 80 minutes. He's playing on the edge, and I don't really think you want Kikau to be that guy either. You need an arsehole through the middle who's ready to lead, and I think in Leo Thompson, Canterbury have found that. So heading into the future for them, I'm very, very excited about this signing. I still think they do need to make some other changes to their roster, and I think they need to go out and make more signings into the future. I mentioned the halves and the fullback. I think, three very, very good players, but I do think if they are to try and win a comp in the next 3 years, which I would safely assume is Canterbury's aim, I do think they probably need to go out and find either a star fullback or a star halfback to feature in that side. Once again, easier said than done. But when you have a look at what they did last year and how they overachieved, if they can do that for the next year or two, Canterbury's already a very attractive spot to go to. And that could skyrocket over the next few seasons, especially when you get a guy like Leo Thompson arriving. If his career keeps going in the way that I'm anticipating it will, I think this will be a brilliant signing. And I think they'll be able to attract more players off the back of it. So very good for Canterbury. Looks like they've got him at reasonably good value, in my opinion. The reports are that the Canberra Raiders were willing to pay more. The reports are the Newcastle Knights are willing to match it and potentially pay a little bit more. Once again, guys, all reported. Read into it what you will, but that is what has been reported. When I look at what has been reported, we'll start with the Canberra Raiders. Does it shock me the Raiders are willing to pay over that? No, it doesn't in the slightest. And if I was the Canberra Raiders, I would have been willing to pay overs for him to get him there. As I said, I get the strategy. Everyone sort of said, oh, you should spend that money on a halfback or someone. Okay, sweet. Who's going to move to Canberra? Who's going to be the star halfback that everyone wants that is going to move to Canberra? There aren't too many of them around. I would argue there's close to none of them around. You've got Jamal Fogarty. He's the guy moving forward, and I think you can be very successful with him. Can you win a comp? I don't know, but if you let Fogarty go, who are you going to sign that's better than him realistically? I'm not sure if that guy is out there and is willing to go there. It could be one of these young guys they've brought, your Sanders, your Ethan Strange, your Chevy Stewarts. The Canberra Raiders are banking on these young talents turning into stars and them turning them into stars down there. And I back that. And if you're going to have young guys in your spine in key positions, you best hope you're winning the middle. And I think that's what they've tried to do. They know Papali'i's going to be leaving soon. They're still going to have Tarpanay, Corey Horsburgh, Hudson Young, Hosking. It's a very good side. You got your Emre Goulas and these guys, these slightly younger guys, Ata Mariota, who I really like. Getting Leo Thompson, though, I think it would have at least guaranteed that the Raiders are competing through the middle in every single game, if not winning it, which would have laid a fantastic platform for their young spine. So I get it. Everyone wants the Raiders to go out and find sign a superstar fullback, a superstar 5'8", an origin halfback. Reality is they can't fucking get them down there. I've been talking about this for a calendar year. I think it's becoming very, very evident now. So, for them to bolster their forward pack and lay the best possible platform they can and try and bully sides through the middle. They've got a gun hooker coming through, Owen Paddy, who I believe will be a real game changer for them. And you want to get the best forward pack you can for him to play off the back of. I get it from the Canberra Raiders. I feel I'm devastated for them, to be completely honest with you. I would have loved to have seen him land down there. I think it would have been fantastic. And once again, you got to feel sorry for them, as much as you guys out there, you might not like the Raiders or whatever, Ricky Stewart, how he deals with himself and whatnot, but just from a recruitment point of view, I refuse to listen to arguments that it's an even playing field. It isn't for the Canberra Raiders at the moment. It is brutal out there. It's very, very tough. They have to pay overs to get guys, which creates a lot of publicity, and then when it gets reported that they have signed a guy, when it turns out they haven't, that just makes life even harder for the Canberra Raiders, and it just makes the optics even worse. There's another star player who simply decided, I do not want to live in Canberra. Very, very tough. I feel for the Canberra Raiders and you Canberra Raiders fans. It's fucking brutal to watch. As I said, I would have loved to have seen him land at the Raiders, but it wasn't meant to be. The other side of this coin, obviously the optics, they are not good for the Canberra Raiders. The optics of the Newcastle Knights are awful. And this is probably my biggest concern of all, to be completely honest with you. I mentioned last year, caused quite a stir that I don't think KP is going to finish his career at the Newcastle Knights. I just can't see it happening. Maybe KP's happy up there. You know, he seems to have a good life up there and whatnot. But I just think a guy like KP and the way that he plays and the way that he puts his body on the line, you know, I think that for a couple of years there, we all sort of thought, oh, KP's just sort of floating about. He's, you know, football doesn't mean as much to him as other guys. Honestly, last few years, I think he's absolutely rubbished all those calls and whatnot. I think he wants to win a comp. I think it means a lot to him, as it should. And I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do it at the Newcastle Knights. And, you know, I don't have a quote or anything like that from Leo Thompson, but, you know, he's playing for a team that's made the finals the last 2 years in a row. You know, less than half the comp, well, heaps less than half the comp has done that. Only about 6 teams have done that. They've got a star fullback. They've got plenty of halves in the building. They've got other good players in that side at the moment. They've got a number of young, good guys in that squad as well. It's a good place to live, Newcastle. And Leo Thompson's made the decision that, no, I don't want to be there. And that is really, really concerning for me. The optics out of Newcastle over the last year, I've been very concerned with. The mixing and maxing of halves. It's just made no sense. As much as you might not like some of the guys that are in the halves up there, or you might want to see changes, I mean, isn't it just Rugby League 101 that you want continuity in your halves? You want you guys to play with each other, get used to each other, and build on something. When you have a look at 2 years ago, they played Jackson Hastings and Tyson Gamble. Now, at the start of the season, I genuinely think people would have ranked them as probably a bottom 4 halves pairing. They got their team to the top 8 and their fullback won a Dally M medal. They played together the entire season. They worked off a base. From memory, they did start a little bit slow. They picked up as the season went on, and they weren't blowing teams out, but they were finding ways to win games of football because they were managing games well and just creating space for their fullback. You then get to this year, and by the end of the season, we've got Phoenix Crossland, we've got Jack Cogger, you got Price bouncing around and whatnot. I think Gamble was coming off the bench. Hastings couldn't make the side. It was just all over the place, and I have big concerns about that heading to the future. Off the back of that, they lose Daniel Saifidi. Like, he's got a brother in the same team, for Christ's sake. They always look a middle short, even with the Saifidis and Leo Thompson. Fast forward 3 months later, Dan Saifidi is gone, and Leo Thompson has got 12 months left before he's out the door as well. And once again, I repeat, they have always looked a middle short to me, despite having these 4 really good middles in Adam Elliott, the Saifidis, and Leo Thompson. I've been concerned about it for quite some time. I've said it for a long time. I think that what KP has managed to do is sort of band-aided a lot of issues up there at the Newcastle Knights. And I'm really concerned. They've obviously got like young Hopwood coming through. Well, I think he's going to be a very good player. Don't get me wrong. I know that people at Newcastle are very, very excited about him, as am I. I think he's going to be great. But, not many front row forwards, not named Payne Haas, walk into first grade and dominate from the start. In the front row position, it takes 2 or 3 years to find your feet and really work yourself out in first grade. And, you've seen that with some of the great front row forwards, like even Joe Tarpanay. Like, I remember watching him up at Newcastle. It took him a long time to find his feet, bounce around on the edge, in the middle. JWH, it took him a long time at the Manly Seagulls, arrived at the Roosters, a little bit hit and miss for a few years, then he found his feet. It takes time in the front row. It's the toughest competition in the fucking world, and you get chucked in the front row against the other alphas in the competition. It's bloody tough. Once again, I think Hopwood's going to be a very good player, but fuck, you're putting a lot on his shoulders. I've had a number of people from Newcastle message me say he's going to be the next chief. Mate, don't worry about him being the next chief. Worry about just keeping him in Newcastle and just get his development done in the first 2 to 3 years. Because at the moment, by the time he's going to be a regular starter in first grade, if they don't go out and sign anyone, it's sort of him, Jacob Saifidi, Adam Elliott, who I like Adam Elliott, good player, but, not like a superstar by any means. Jacob Saifidi, maybe he can go to a new level. But every time I think Saifidi's about to really bump up, he's sort of, I don't know, he just tends to go a little bit quiet for me. I think he can go missing at times. And I think that when he's playing his best footy, it's when him and Daniel were bouncing off each other. He's got ability, there's no doubt about that. But do I trust the Newcastle Knights are going to get the very best out of him week to week? Not really, because there's not many forwards that they have over the last few years. I think moving Tyson Frizzell into the middle is going to be one way to start to solve that problem. Once again, Tyson Frizzell isn't young, though. He's not going to play forever. Neither is Dane Gagai. And this is the other thing that I look at with the Newcastle Knights, that like these guys that are doing really well for them at the moment, like Dan Gagai, I'd argue, was probably their best outside back last year. He was tremendous. He's not going to be playing in 3 or 4 years' time. Tyson Brazil, who's tough as nails and a leader up there, I don't know if he's going to be playing in 3 or 4 years' time. Like, it's just a lot to take in. And once again, I would love to see KP stay at Newcastle and win a comp there. But I've got to tell you, I'm far from convinced that he will. Week to week, Teamless Tuesday is a bit of a lottery for the Newcastle Knights, and it makes life very, very difficult. And if I'm KP and I'm looking at the future and I want to win a premiership, I don't think I'm going to do it at Newcastle. And once again, I hope I'm wrong. I'd be fucking stoked to be wrong. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just not sure if it's going to be the place for him moving forward. And, with all your middles leaving, they need to lay a platform for him to do his stuff. And with Saifidi gone and now Leo Thompson leaving soon, I have big concerns about the Newcastle Knights. I've tipped them to make the 8 the last 2 years. I don't think they're going to be there this year. And I think at times it's going to be a really testing period. I think they re-signed Adam O'Brien at the end of last season. I think that's going to be a very, very interesting watch up there at Newcastle, because I think scraping into the 8 and a reasonably soft draw on the run home, I think it might have covered up a little bit more that's going on there at the Newcastle Knights. And once again, guys, I think that this is a great example of what's going on there, that a guy like Leo Thompson, who the Newcastle Knights have reportedly offered the same amount as the Canterbury Bulldogs, if not a little bit more. They've made the 8 the last 2 years. Daniel Saifidi is leaving. It opens up more minutes, more opportunity for Leo Thompson to be the guy. His brother has just signed there, and he's decided to go down to the Canterbury Bulldogs. A very, very interesting watch here. And once again, Phil Gould, a very strong figure in our game, very hard to say no to. I get it. But, I mean, if you knew the Newcastle Knights, you already had him in the door. You already had him in the door playing good footy, achieving things, playing finals footy, and he has still made the decision, this is not the place for me and my development. A really interesting watch up there in Newcastle. See how it goes over the next few years. I know people in Newcastle think I'm a hater and whatnot, and that's fine. I'm just giving you my honest opinion on what I see, and I think that there has been some concerning signs there recently around the coaching, around the personnel they're picking, and I think this one is a huge red flag. The Newcastle Knights read the reports a month ago he was heading to Newcastle. He was heading to the Canberra Raiders, and even then they weren't able to convince him to stay. Since then, he has signed with another club. Very, very concerning for the Newcastle Knights. Very disappointing for the Canberra Raiders. I really, really do feel for them. I wish he would have landed there, to be completely honest with you. But for the Canterbury Bulldogs, I think their premiership jigsaw, it's missing a couple of pieces, and I think this is one of the pieces that was missing. I think now when you look at their team over the next 2 to 3 years, I think with a couple of the young guys coming through and whatnot as well, I think they've got a forward pack now that can develop into a premiership winning forward pack. I just think it's the other pieces in the spine they probably need to sort out. But you already know, Phil Gould, he'll be cooking away. They've got young guys there like Woods and whatnot. I think he's a few years away still realistically. You've got to manage him, when you bring him in and how you bring him in, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be a very interesting challenge to see how they manage their halves and their spine over the next few seasons. But their outside backs, forward pack, hooker, I think they're ticking all the boxes they need to. Matty Burton at 5'8", obviously. It's just that 7-1 jersey that I want to see our Canterbury handle it over the next few seasons.